We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
You got to have the why, and we know our why. So I think
you don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Millions and millions of people have done this already. You can get help, you can get a roadmap, you can save a lot of time, money, and frustration. Welcome to the Value Add Podcast with K&K. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Value Add Podcast with K&K. Today, we have our good friend Jason Scally on the show. Jason is the CEO and founder of Oakwood Escrow. And like I said, he's just really become, him and his wife, really good friends of ours over the years, too. So, Jason, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Jay.
This is fun.
How's it going?
Really well.
Cool.
Thank you.
So, Jay, we were talking yesterday, but everybody comes on here, we're always like, how do we meet everybody? So if I remember the story, we had an office in Mission Hills, San Diego, right. And I think I had my little rinky-dink sign out there where I'd write the rates, and then I'd put the APRs. Okay,
there's still a sign on that.
No, not that one. The little
the
A-frame sign on the ground. Yeah. And I think Jason's like, oh, is there a lender in here? And you came moseying in, and then we ended up just starting to work title together. And
if I'm not mistaken, that sign brought in a lot of walk-in business.
No, it did. It actually worked. It actually worked.
Little tiny sign.
Yeah, it was $69. It was $75 to do, and I'd go out there every day, change the rate, and put it out there.
Write the rates on it.
And then you came up, and then we just started working together. And then, I think what year was that? 2010.
It was, I think.
Yeah, 9 or 10.
9 or 10, yeah, because Kenny and I met in the beginning of end of 2008, early 2009, and then we got our office. So it had to have been probably 2009.
10 or 10, yeah, right there.
Because you guys had just moved in. You were still getting the phones worked out.
Yeah.
So it was literally
desks set up.
Yeah, it was 2009. We literally just came from working out of the one-bedroom apartment in Encinitas behind the animal shelter, as you always say. And then, yeah. And I think to kind of start this off, Jay, if you can I know obviously a little about your career, and sometimes obviously when we get people on here, we get more in detail. But if you can kind of tell us about just your career. I know before title, you were a cop or a sheriff, which is just kind of crazy. And then you did title, and now it's escrow. Can you kind of just quickly kind of go through how you landed here?
Of course. So I'll go all the way back. Went to St. Mary's High School up in Moraga near San Francisco, Berkeley area. Kind of became interested in law enforcement there. I worked for a department called Moraga PD for nights and weekends, 4 days a week. Then that kind of got me interested in law enforcement, and I thought that was the direction I wanted to go. Majored in poli-sci and minor in history. Graduated, came down to San Diego, and right onto the San Diego Police Department, where I spent the majority of my law enforcement career with them. Then Erin, actually my wife, was working for a staffing company, and they staffed for all of the title companies at the time. This was when the housing boom was going
So
big.
what year probably
early
right now? What year?
That was probably 2000. Yeah, early 2000s, 2001, 2.
Yeah.
Okay,
3.
so right after 9/11 and things started kicking
Right.
up. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was still a cop at that time, or a police officer, and I'd go to all of her after work events with her that involved networking with the clients or social events with the different management groups that would use her staffing agency to place escrow officers and things of that nature. So that was my first introduction. Outside of that, I had no knowledge of title and escrow and that whole the real estate world, really. Then one day they asked me if I'd be willing to make the move over to work for them. A couple of the people I met in the management side, we really connected, and they made me an offer. And it was right about that time where the department was going through, the city was going through a lot of changes, and I decided it might be something I'd be interested in. And so I made the move from law enforcement into title.
That's crazy.
Wow, yeah,
that's
that
just
is
crazy.
It's just
crazy.
not very
No.
often that you hear somebody
was,
making a move like that.
It was definitely not without its scary moments.
For sure. Anything you do that's new, right?
Especially into this industry. I mean, this industry is something that unless you're really in it, you don't understand the intricate workings and how different, and just different from one location to different locations. San Diego, LA, Orange County, Riverside, all have their own little microclimates. It's very different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then, so then you went to title, and then how did, how did Oakwood come apart? I mean, I kind of know the story, but how did it officially just start?
Well, I was fortunate when I first started in title. I was working for a company called LandAmerica, who ultimately in the crash of 2008 had to fold up and sold the majority of their title companies, lawyers, Commonwealth, to Fidelity. But when I first started with them, I was on the developer services side, so I worked with developers throughout California, into Mexico, and a couple of other states. But it gave me the ability to stay in the office and really connect with the team that was doing the work. So I wasn't going into offices and like a lot of title reps do on the residential side, their job, they have to be in the offices connecting with the real estate agents. My clients were behind a desk in their office and didn't want me in their office, so my time was spent making sure that their deals were going through and the problems weren't happening, but in our office.
And developer services, too, is more work. You don't just pull a prelim. I mean, you got a lot more kind of like paperwork that you have to do
really
in order.
do.
Yeah, so they want you to do that instead of like taking them for coffee or doing,
you're
giving them
kinda-
box seats or whatever it
you're
is.
covering their butt.
Exactly. You're
Yeah.
making sure that
Yeah.
the mapping's getting done, that the DRE work's being accomplished, that they get their white paper, their pink. These are all different phases
Yeah.
of their development. And then obviously they have a lot of needs for introductions because they're behind their desk so much. They're not getting out to networking events. So one of my roles was making sure I was able to connect them with financing with the right people and kind of help them in their development of business. But being in the office so much gave me a real insight as to what the escrow officers were going through and the title officers from the back end. And so that connection really kind of got me interested in escrow specifically because escrow in California is kind of, I call it the sheriff of the transaction. Their role is to make sure that that contract and that everything that the two parties have agreed to when we receive that contract is fulfilled. And it's their job to stop the transaction if it doesn't, if somebody doesn't do what they're supposed to do. And so that really interested me. So that was kind of what brought me to the escrow standpoint. And then I had the opportunity to open up an escrow company with some guidance that I had received, and I jumped at it, and that was in 2012. We opened up in Rancho Bernardo, our first office. We opened up with 3 employees and myself.
I remember that office.
And it was very exciting. It was my first kind of endeavor into starting something myself. And we opened up and grew to 100 employees, 5 locations, and just had a lot of fun with it.
When did Oakwood start? Like when?
June 2012.
June 2012. So from 2012
7-year
to today,
anniversary coming up.
Yep,
Yeah, 7-year anniversary, and you have 5 locations.
5 locations.
And over 100 employees.
It fluctuates,
Yeah,
obviously,
fluctuates,
due to
just-
the market.
Right, for
and
sure.
market conditions.
But that's like pretty fast growth. I mean, that's insane.
It was a very fast
Yeah.
growth trajectory.
Yeah.
Which comes with some problems, but also
Always
a lot of
does.
fun.
But they say, I know they say more money, more problems. I think the more you grow your business, again, your revenues are up, and that means that you're going to have more issues. So it's funny. Somebody told me one time, and I think it's true, is that we have to kind of look at it as like being honored to take on those challenges because it means you're doing something
Absolutely.
right, you know?
That's absolutely the case.
Yeah.
Each one is a learning experience.
For sure.
I really try not to judge either any problems as good or bad because you don't know where they're going to lead you. And
Right.
Until you have that full story, you can't judge it as good or bad.
Yeah, and if nothing else, it's like a huge learning experience.
Oh,
But you're right.
always.
Usually out of those issues come opportunities, right?
Things you didn't even see coming.
Yeah.
Or changes that you have to make because of that then
Yeah.
lead towards a positive.
Yeah.
very
What was your vision too for Oakwood? Like, did you ever imagine that you were going to grow this quickly or have the success? Like, was that part of your plan when you started?
Growth was part of my plan, but I didn't realize that we'd have such success at it. And that really is a testament to our team and the culture that we've created. And that started with really our first 3 employees, and then everybody we've added to the team since then. We're very, very cautious about adding new people because each person brings a new dynamic, a new set of ideas. And so we're very cautious about who we bring onto the team. But fortunately, we've been able to bring the right people on that have helped us really be able to grow. Otherwise, we would never have been able to do what we've done.
And how did you find like the right people? I mean,
Yeah,
I've
'cause
heard a
that
lot
is-
about it, but I think it's
That's
really
tough in this industry, as you know. 'Cause,
yeah. But also you took a really,
any part of the industry.
I would say, more aggressive and kind of a different path. Like you weren't just posting ads
No, I didn't
on
post a
Indeed
single-
or
yeah.
wherever. Yeah.
Nothing like that.
Yeah.
Every single person that works at Oakwood, I've met with, and I've personally hired. So that's what it comes down to: is I meet with them and I just listen and we talk, And
Sometimes it takes time.
oh,
It's
it
a
takes
relationship.
years.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of the people. This is a relatively small industry, even though there's a lot of people in it. We all, if you take the time, you get to know each other through different organizational events, through lunches for unrelated, not employment type meetings at all. But you start to get to know people, and as you get to know them, you start to realize that could be somebody that would be a perfect fit on our team. And when that time comes and the ability on the team exists, that's when I would reach out and say, hey, have you ever thought about maybe Oakwood? And
So you take a lot of time to invest in those relationships before you even think about bringing somebody on.
it's key.
Yeah.
And then once you and then it's like anything, once it starts rolling, then you have the teams making suggestions, and
Yeah.
and people are coming to you. So we have a lot of team members that have brought people on with them that have worked out really well.
Do you guys, obviously, like I know you, so I'm saying this unbiased, but it's like, if it's funny, because a couple things about you, to compliment you, if I talk to people at Oakwood and you're not in the room, it's like, I don't know if anybody would say anything bad about you, which is, I've always told you, everybody said you're awesome to work for. Like, a lot of people are very loyal to you because of you, not Oakwood. But my thing is there, you guys grew so fast. You've obviously taken a lot of market share, which obviously can piss some people off and obviously get some attention in both. And for you, you're like, it is what it is. But I think now I think people, when you're doing a good job, when people are trying to copy you in a way.
I always take that as a compliment.
Yeah, I think that is. Do you guys have what makes you different, or is there like a secret sauce, or why do you think you've been able to grow this fast, get all these people, and then obviously retain them? Because right now I know just even in my industry, loan officers, they're getting picked off or moving all over the place, and I think they're not happy, or they're getting offered here. A lot of them go for the wrong reasons because of money. But what do you think has like your secret sauce, or why people are there and you guys are this successful?
I think it's a two-part answer. So hard work is the reason for the growth and the reason why we've been able to achieve what we've achieved and the name we've achieved. So it's not just about getting to a certain point. It's about getting there with a reputation that you want, which is we do good work. Our clients appreciate the work we do, and we always have the best interest of them in mind when we're doing it. And we want to make sure that they understand that and they feel that, not just that we're telling them that. So that's hard work. That's where that comes in, and that's the secret sauce, is hard work on that front.
Okay.
The culture, I think it's just about all of us treating each other with respect. So the main thing in the office, escrow always has problems. We're the ones, even if it's not our problem, we're the ones that
Yeah.
It's on your plate.
it's on our plate to deliver the news.
Yep.
And so
It's true.
that's stressful, very, very. So it's a stressful industry. And if you're in an office with 20 people and everybody's having a little bit of a different stress going on at that moment, little things can matter. And irritations can occur. The way we've avoided them or have managed to avoid them on a large scale is that we respect each other, and that's the biggest part. To earn that respect means that you have to put in that hard work.
Yeah.
And if the team sees you putting in that hard work, that respect level's there. And so we treat each other with respect. We care about each other. It's less of a job to us. I mean, it's a job, but we're a family. We really think of ourselves as a family. Which comes good and bad, but because it's still a company, we still have to
Families
operate.
have problems too.
Families have
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
Yeah.
But we really are. We care about one another, and we
Okay.
respect one another, and that is earned. And I'd say that just about all of us, we've earned that respect, and that goes for me as well. I've earned that respect with the team.
Yeah, because I know for sure. I mean, obviously we're friends and we talk, but you definitely have worked really hard to get to this point. That's for sure. I mean, I don't think people even understand how hard you work. But I know the late nights. It's not just one. It's not just two. It's been years of late nights and the planning and the paperwork and the audits and all the things, but paperwork. Do you think that escrow, when you just said it's like hard or you get thrown it, do you think it's because you're dealing with the money part?
Certainly, and that's become more of an issue. So when we first started, wire fraud wasn't what it is today. It wasn't even a thing then. So the money part has become a much more stressful part of the business. I don't know, what was the question again?
No, it's
started
more
thinking-
like, do you think money, because you guys,
that's
sometimes
right.
you guys
It's like
get
one of the most
you get the
stressful
blame or
things.
this, but do you think it's because you're handling money? Because let's be honest, money is probably some of the most important things in the
That's a good
transaction.
question. I think and I've thought a lot about this because I'm always trying to improve the escrow process. I think the biggest stress comes that nobody truly understands what escrow does. And one of our
You're just like the middleman
we're the
for most
middle
people.
guy.
So
Yeah.
so let's just talk about what the heck is. If I'm a consumer and I get my closing statement or just for me and they go, what is this escrow fee? Like why am I paying this? And what exactly are they getting and why do they need escrow?
So escrow does, basically we get the contract. So buyer and seller agree upon their terms for a sale of, we'll just use a residential property as an example. They agree that they're going to sell the house. This person's going to buy the house. They want these certain things met. They want inspections done. They list out all of their terms, their price, everything. If they're receiving financing, if they're not receiving financing, every point in that contract matters. And they usually use the standard car contract, and I'm sure you've seen them. They're pretty lengthy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of points in those contracts.
Yes.
Our job is to make sure that all those points are met
By both sides too, because you've had sellers. Like, imagine if there was no escrow and buyers had to give the sellers money before it was even, or they didn't have to, or the buyers held on to the money. That's the thing for me. I'm
Or they
like,
spent the deposit.
oh my
Whoops.
gosh, can you imagine what it would be like? It would be mayhem.
Mayhem.
Yeah.
And then we have to facilitate all of those different points with different agencies.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to work with the lenders, and sometimes we'll have multiple lenders, come in and out if they're not a good lender.
Yeah.
And then we have to deal with new
Or
lenders.
they couldn't close and another one's got to come in. Yeah.
And then that lender has their requirements that we have to meet.
That's
so
right.
if they're obtaining a loan, we have to look at what their instructions are, and we have to make sure that the buyer is complying with all of those points. Like certain money can't just come in or out of the escrow unless the lender agrees to it. So there's a lot of points and terms and facilitation. So we're dealing with the inspection companies, we're dealing with the buyer's agent, the seller's agent, the buyer and the seller. Title, we're dealing with the lender, we're dealing with family members sometimes who are helping somebody buy a home or
Insurance.
You couldn't deal with an appraiser if they need to get paid through escrow, right?
We don't deal too much with the appraisers, but that is always an issue if it doesn't appraise,
Yeah.
and then it falls out of escrow. But there's just so many different components to it, and we're the ones that keep all of them together and manage them, that when one of the components falls apart through no fault of escrow, or any control, I should say, of escrow, we're the ones who have to call the parties and let them know that we have a problem.
And then you guys kind of are a referee sometimes when contingency periods maybe aren't met, and emotions get mixed in there, and
No, it gets thrown on them.
Yeah.
They're like, why are you calling escrow? Like you're like, guys, I'm all of a sudden Dr. Phil or the counselor.
Part of that, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to educate the consumers more. That's been Oakwood's big push this last year, is to get the consumers more involved with the escrow process so that their frustrations can be lessened. Because if they don't know who's controlling what or what our role is, and we're just giving them bad news, then every little problem can become a big problem.
Yeah.
So, but if we have that open communication when times are good and we explain what the process is and they better understand the process, and that's really what we're trying to move towards and focus on. And I think our industry as a whole eventually needs to start to get there, because consumers are becoming more and more aware about the process in real estate with Zillow, Redfin, all the different accesses they have now that they didn't have 10 years ago. It's really starting to change the marketplace. And so
Absolutely.
I'm seeing consumers ask questions that they're obviously researching and know to ask, and I'm thrilled about that. And so that's kind of our new push.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of funny because we all sit at the same table, and for people that don't know, we don't get paid unless the transaction closes.
Yes.
So I could work hard, you could work hard, you could work hard. If the transaction blows up on day 30 or 60 or whatever, we don't get paid.
It's over.
If the appraiser goes out, they get paid, or the
Yep.
inspector, things like that. We're
Yep.
the last kind of people that it's like, if it
Yeah,
doesn't
the
work.
appraiser still gets paid if the property doesn't
No,
appraise.
even if
you
the
know,
inspector
and-
goes out, they're paying
yeah.
the inspector. The
Yeah, the
has to
inspector
get
still
paid.
gets paid if
Yep.
the deal doesn't go through,
What do you like? What is one thing? Because you talked about education, I totally agree. Like Crystal and I keep saying this, all the marketing and stuff. We're watching these people. The new marketing is called educating. It's not like, hey, I've got the best rate. People are like, it's more like, I got a good rate, but let me explain the process of getting a loan or a commercial loan or escrow and things like that. What do you think is one of the big misconceptions of escrow that you probably hear all the time, maybe from a consumer or anybody, where it's like you hear something, you're like, how do people get this information? It's totally incorrect. I don't know if there is one out there.
I don't know of one off the top of my head, but that lends towards the point of they just don't even understand the process at all.
Maybe that's what it is. They just don't understand the process. That's a
So we recently did we called it Escrow Exposed, where we had a couple of our sales team members go out onto the street and interview people and just ask them, what is escrow?
Oh my gosh.
Homeowners
I love
that
that.
own a home that have been through escrow,
Yeah.
and the responses we got were amazing. It really showed me that they don't, and they've been through it. These are people that own homes.
Did you guys like publish this somewhere?
We did. Well, we videotaped it, and I think
Yeah.
it might be on our website or
That's
Facebook.
funny. That's a
maybe.
good
I'm
idea.
like, I need to see this.
It's funny some of the answers we got. But this is where their money is being held. This is where this is the main part of the transaction once you get past the contract stage. So for them not to understand what it is, it kind of woke me up that we have to really start to educate people more.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think? I'm trying to think. What is probably the most difficult part of the transaction in escrow? You know, like what do you guys probably struggle with the most when somebody's going through? Maybe on your side that people know, what is probably one of the most difficult parts of escrow on your side that you guys have to deal with that a consumer probably has no clue about?
I'd say all the moving parts. So,
Okay.
for example, just before I came in here today, we just found out we're supposed to close in a couple of days on a property, and the seller just went on a vacation to China. And that's not good. Not if we're still going to try to keep our close date, which they've agreed to. So little issues like that
Like
pop
figure
up.
out how to get my docs to the embassy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which was exactly what we have to do.
And
Yeah.
then good luck trying to get an appointment because that's
Quickly.
not always easy either.
Exactly. And then
That's
trying
the
to find the embassy in the province of China that they're in,
Yes.
and doing that research,
Yeah.
that brings on a whole nother...
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, figure it out, right?
Sorry. So big things. But I would also say the amount of fraud that's occurring right now
Yeah.
is a huge
That's the
issue.
biggest struggle.
Yeah.
Biggest struggle currently to our industry. We've got to educate the consumers not to accept wiring instructions via email, because what these hackers are doing is they're getting into somebody's account. Now, Oakwood has taken huge lengths to protect. We do quarterly penetration tests of our system. We have two-way authentication to log in. We get notified if anybody even attempts to do a breach. The quarterly breach tests that we do is we hire professionals to try to break into our system every quarter, and they expose our weaknesses. We take those weaknesses if they find any. They haven't found any for the last two go-rounds, but when they do, it could be a systems upgrade for Windows or Microsoft.
It could be little things we just don't
Little
think
things
about.
that we don't even think about, but that come about because somebody's learned to exploit it or has found something in it that doesn't work. That is so crucial to make sure you stay on top of. But then the hackers, because they can't get into our system, they've started going after real estate agents who, if you think about it, they put all of their information out because that's their job. They have to advertise this property. It's public record of who owns it. They're able to find who owns it. They're able to find these agents easily. Their emails are all over the place. They're hacking into systems, and then they're just sitting there and they're waiting. And this can be an email that the buyer, seller, or the agent receives that's just they click on something accidentally. They think it's nothing. Nothing happens right away. But now the hacker's in their system, and he sits in their email system and just watches all the emails coming from escrow, title, the lender, the agents. And when it's getting ready to close, that's when they strike. They'll do a spoofing attempt, which is where they make it look like it's coming from the lender, the title company, one of the agents, or the escrow company. And it's as easy as going into a system and just typing in whatever you want the person to see. And that's who it looks like it's coming from. It's literally that simple. They then send it to them with wiring instructions that aren't the title or escrow company's wire instructions.
Now, like if somebody changes their email password, is that something that could like kick them out, or
No,
is it
they're using, like he said, they're doing a, like they could say,
like they're
let's
in
say
your
let's say
computer?
your
They're
email
not
is
just
Jason Scally at Oakwood Escrow. He'll put 2 D's on the end of Oakwood. You just didn't see it in the email.
No.
No, that is one thing that
Okay, they do that,
They
right?
do
Okay.
that, but the spoofing is where they'll actually. So if you go into, I believe it. Let's just use Microsoft because it's pretty common.
Yeah.
You go into Outlook and you can actually put what you want the recipient of your email to see. It's not really your real email address. So what we have to do is we pull headers. And that gives us the real email address, not what they want us to see. But a lot of consumers and agents, and if you're not savvy to this, you don't know to look for that. And you see an email and it looks like it's from the right person and it's got all the right points and they know about the transaction. They know how much money you're supposed to send. You don't think that it's fraudulent. But people are losing their entire life savings on this all over the country right now. It's unbelievable how rampant it's become.
Wow, that's crazy.
That's lovely.
Construction next door.
Yeah. So to describe this, because I know we went through it to people who are listening. So basically, it's like I'm going to buy a house. And I'm buying it from Crystal, and then I'm going to wire the money to your company.
Right.
What somebody's going to do is somebody might intersect the wire. Like, you basically tell me when it's supposed to come to basically say, hey, you got to send it to this account. So I take my $100,000 that's supposed to be a down payment and escrow, whatever. It was supposed to go to Jason at Oakwood, but it ends up in China.
Exactly.
That's what you're saying is, and it's gone. I'm in trouble.
We have a very small window of hours to try to stop that wire if we know about it. The problem is that they don't realize it until maybe a day later or 2 days later, and at that point, there's nothing that anybody can do about it. They'll get into that email account. They'll send you a fake email with their wiring instructions, and yeah, that's exactly it. Then
You send it, think
it.
everything's done,
Right.
and so since you don't even know that you're supposed to be looking for something within a few hours or whatever the time frame is, and then before you know it, it's gone.
So what Oakwood's doing to combat that right now is every escrow that we open, we call the buyer and the seller, and we scare them within reason. We let them know about what's going on. We let them know we will never, ever
Email you.
ever email you wiring instructions ever. If you receive an email, even if it's from your lender saying it's from us, your title company saying, don't accept it. Call us
Any
immediately.
escrow, if you're listening, if you receive wire transfer from any escrow via email, if you do, you should pick up
At
the
least call
phone,
and verify before
call
you do
the
anything.
escrow, spend 5 minutes and say, is this your wire information?
Correct.
100%, not do
100%.
it. Because you don't think you can lose. Jason knows people that lost a lot of money.
And some of the cases through the association that I'm seeing, it's not even the escrow off the company's name on the wire information. It's somebody's individual name. But consumers don't know enough to look for those little things. And so they just, it is crazy, but it's happening daily.
You know, my bank is doing something now, and I don't know who has had this before, but my bank will now, if I add a new wire recipient, they literally call me and say, do you know this person? Have you done business with this person before? So they've been interrogating me on my wires too, like what's
Because
the
of this,
purpose?
huh?
Yeah,
Because
so
of
they're
this.
really trying to combat it on their end too, but you never know. I mean, these things do slip through the cracks, but and we've had fraud on our accounts too, just because being in real estate and all of that. So we've had multiple instances where we've had to change accounts. So now I think I'm on the like high,
Risk.
risk list. So they do that for us too. And it's like, I'm so glad that they do. Because like you said, it's,
Absolutely.
you never know.
And then with...
Do you know how much money has been stolen across the country?
I'd have to take a look, but it's gone up.
It also releases them from
It's
some liability.
it's a massive number though, right?
Oh, it's a massive number. And if you look at what it was 3 years ago to compared
Do you
to
think
what it
it's
is
like
today,
a
it's
year,
gone up.
hundreds of millions?
Like
Oh,
it's like
absolutely.
exponentially.
So it could be $1 billion
Yeah.
a year.
We could probably even Google it right now, but yeah, it's hundreds of millions.
Monty's going to Google it, so we'll know. What's something that you guys are doing? I know that's the negative that you have to deal with, but you have to. And if somebody is not, if you're working with an escrow company, they just send that out, that's a red flag because they're not taking this very seriously.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if any escrow company today's day and age is sending out wiring instructions via email. If they are, it'd be better for them to stop
Yeah.
for everybody's sake.
Yeah.
Well, and they're like taking a lot of risk on themselves too, because when that
tremendous
money's
amount of
lost, the escrow really takes on the risk for losing that money since
They
you're,
do.
yeah.
Yeah, they do.
What is something you guys are doing, or what's something in the escrow industry that's changing, or you guys are doing the change industry to make it like, because obviously we talk about all the time, Crystal's industry, ours is changing, but we're kind of in some parts of real estate is really changing, and some parts it's like just so old fashioned. What is something you're probably doing to like make it, with technology or whatever?
So really, technology it's affecting all industries. Probably more so on the real estate agent front, the selling side. But our side, the settlement side, title and escrow, we have to keep up with that because things are speeding up. The speed of emails has changed things dramatically for us. People email, text, it's quick, but they want a quick response back. But when you're getting hundreds of them, and then you're also dealing with, waiting on the phone for a tax lien with the IRS, which is not fun right now.
An hour, yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things we have to do because if the seller has a tax lien, we have to get that cleared. That's part of the conditions of the contract. So we might be on the phone with them while we're getting texts and emails. So our technology, the software that's used in the settlement industry really has to get with it.
Okay.
That has to be our next big push. And there's a couple of companies that are really making that push right now that I'm excited about because I think they'll they're going to do good for the industry.
It kind of needs it though, because don't you feel like so many other industries now, like with tech, like it's
That's what I
been
said.
so popular, but it's like real estate has been that like 1,000-pound giant that
I
nobody's
mean,
really
lending,
tackled.
like, for search of homes and lending and stuff, they're for, but look at commercial. You guys
yeah,
are
on the
like,
commercial side, we don't have any technology. For
what'd you find,
anything.
Monty?
So between December 2016 and May 2018, there was $12.53 billion.
Yeah, and can you look to see what it was in 2012?
Does it say 12 billion?
36 increase percent.
136%.
$12 billion.
It's
And
stolen.
136% increase.
And
From the previous
and Jason, I know you've met with
So
I
then
don't know FBI or
2015
whoever.
would be
They're
like-
like
Oh,
they're
yes.
like you're never probably going to see the money again.
So-
if it's gone in a couple days, it's gone.
It's fortunate. Oakwood has a good relationship with a couple of people in law enforcement, and we've worked closely with them on this. And actually, San Diego is one of the hubs for this.
Yeah.
But there's very little that can be done once it's out of the country, and that's the problem that we're facing, is that it gets out of the country so quickly that we don't have the ability to do anything about it other than report it, keep record of it, and it becomes a statistic, unfortunately.
That's crazy.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about too today is it's kind of like our industry, but you're even more. You guys, you kind of have your pulse to the market, because one of the things we always ask in our industry, you're like, if you want to know how the market is, you don't have to look at the market. Just call a title rep or an escrow officer and go, hey, are we call Cameron,
many
are your
prelims are
orders
you
up or
opening?
down,
How
or what's
many
going on? And
escrows?
you guys know, you know, like,
Yeah, we see
you
the
don't even have to
openings.
listen to the news. You're like, look, I know what's going on, like real time. That's just by people closing and orders being open and stuff.
That's the volume, yeah. The openings, closings, cancellation rates, things of that nature. It also tells us we know a lot of where the buyer's mentality is and the seller's mentality
Yeah.
is, just based upon what we're the feedback we're getting and the cancellations we're seeing, and the unwillingness sometimes of bending on certain things when inspections come back. And
Yeah.
So, like, from your point of view, that that high level that you're seeing all this stuff. I mean, I don't know if I say where do you think the market is, but we don't have to sit
Like,
here
what
and
are you
guess. Like,
seeing?
what are you seeing
Yeah.
that you're like within those little sectors you're seeing, and then maybe we can go into what that really means in the market.
So 2018 was a very interesting year. 17 was a wonderful year for the San Diego, and I'll speak
Yeah.
specific to San Diego.
Yeah.
Southern California can kind of be wrapped up into that, but I'll speak specific to San Diego. Wonderful. 2017 was one of probably our top year for revenue, for prices of homes.
Which meant
all
you were
the way
doing a lot of
around.
transactions.
A lot of transactions.
Great year to be in real estate, basically.
Good year to
overall.
be
Yeah.
in real estate.
Okay.
18 changed a little bit. And when I say a little bit, dramatically. So 2018 had good weeks followed by bad weeks is what I was calling it, because we'd have a week with high openings followed by the next week with very, very low openings and high cancellation rates. And that just followed the trend the entire year, even during our second and our third quarter. So in real estate, you have your first quarter, second, third, and fourth. In settlement industry, it's the second and the third that's really your ability to
Spring, summer.
yeah,
Is that what it is?
You store up for the winter, and
Yeah.
when the fourth quarter comes, hopefully you had a good third and fourth or second and third to get you through, and then the first. 2018, we saw such a slowdown in the fourth quarter, and then led into January that it was scary. It was. Some reports of the county recorder, December had lower recording numbers than in 2008. And that was, if you remember, the financial crisis period of time. It didn't affect the whole world, and it wasn't in all segments of marketplaces, but certainly our marketplace was affected. In February, I saw a turnaround. So starting the end of January, we saw prices starting to come down. So going back real quick to why I think that we had that stall,
Yeah,
was
if
because
you-
the prices were high. The home prices were just increasing every month. They kept increasing. Interest rates, if you remember, started going up. The feds were raising those rates. There was a lot of question about what was going on in the marketplace, a lot of obviously political turmoil. And I think all of that just lent towards people being less likely to make exceptions. And sellers, for the most part, are in good loans and have nice interest rates right now. So their need to sell isn't as great. So we saw a lot of unwillingness on both sides to compromise to come to an actual deal. So which also led to the high cancellation rate. So after an inspection, they found termite, or they found they needed to replace the pool plastering, or what have you, and then that led towards the deal falling apart because the buyer or seller weren't willing to
couldn't come to an agreement.
Couldn't come to a new agreement.
Yeah, don't you think too? Because like one of the things that we noticed last year was sellers were looking at the previous, like the appreciation leading up to that point. And so they were just kind of thinking logically, if they were to apply that appreciation to what they wanted to sell their house for, the house would be worth X. And you're like, no, because we're not having that level of appreciation right now. Like you said, rates are going up, but sellers didn't really want to listen. And then like you said, when they felt like they would have to make a price adjustment, they just said like, I'm not going to sell the property then.
Yeah. And one of the things that I always go back to is if the home was updated every year with the amount of maintenance that needed to be done, then yes, it could be worth that. But if you've taken 10 years and haven't maintained the home and haven't done upgrades on the kitchen or the bathroom and things like that, it might not be worth what Zillow's telling you it is, or the increases in the interest, the rates.
Yeah.
I think people are chasing, I call it chasing appreciation, because I think in 17, there's a lot of great sales in a neighborhood. And then going into 18, it slowed down. So they're like, well, from here to here, Zillow says the appreciation, or this report said went up 10%. So this sold for $750. So I'm going to sell for $800 because we're appreciating. And really, you're like, but you're not getting offers and there's no sales. So everybody was just pushing it up.
Everyone's looking at the history. They're not looking at the future too.
Right.
So,
and I think when we say, I think it was, who was it? The economist guy that, I'm drawing a blank, the real estate coach, you know what I'm talking about. That's a big real estate coach, Tom Ferry. They use some economist guy they all use. And he was saying, look, when I say prices came down, I'm not saying we're going in the negative. He said, we had great appreciation, but we're seeing a pullback from this is not reality to like a more of a reality. And I think people have to swallow and accept and go, okay, so do I really want to sell my house for $750? Because I would have sold it at $800, but it's not worth it now. And that's the problem I think
we're not seeing huge drops, but we're seeing realistic drops to bring the buyers to the table. And the buyers with the interest rate drops that have occurred are agreeing. So February was a very good month. March is looking like it's going to be a good month. And I'm speaking to a volume standpoint.
Yeah.
So from a volume standpoint, we're seeing increases.
People are doing transactions again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're seeing too. It was really interesting because Kenny and I, since we had the baby, like normally we'd be traveling in January, but we were home this year. So it was just crazy though. I felt like the entire industry was on vacation or skiing or doing something. It was crazy. Nobody was working.
I know.
Which again, we've just been talking about that as like a sign that everybody's feeling pretty good right now, because people who didn't used to take those vacations are definitely gone a lot more.
I always look, because I have something to look back on now. I can go back to the last cycle and just human behavior, and right before things corrected, and obviously the corrections, in my opinion, wouldn't be the same, because last cycle was so many bad loans and all these problems. It was very easy to say we have a crisis on our hands. This one will be a little different, but people are like, they're just having fun, and their gas tank's happy and full, and they're just cruising along. And I don't know if some people are still working hard. I think some people are like, they have some savings, so they're not like, oh, I got to get out and work hard. I don't know if that's part of it too, It
very well could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I agree. There's a big difference from 2008 and what
people are stressed out of their mind, and I got to, last question for like the escrow part, and I want to kind of go to the entrepreneur part. What do you probably see in the next 2 to 3 years that's probably going to change? Do you see anything significant changing in your industry? Probably technology or anything?
I think certainly the software that settlement companies use to process people's paperwork and deal with all of the incoming information, that's going to be a big change on the horizon. I also believe that the consumer awareness of what's going on and their involvement in the settlement process is going to increase, just because their knowledge is increasing already. I also see a play on the technology front to tie into a lot of the online things that are occurring with Zillow, Redfin, and companies like that, Keller Williams, all building platforms where a lot of the real estate transaction will occur through technology. We have to be able to meet and match that and be able to accept it through technology, instead of saying, okay, you did all your technology on that side, but now you got to convert back to paper and pencil come on and
You got to be able to plug
Yeah.
in. You got to be able to
gotta
plug
be
in
able
the
to plug
system.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
got to integrate. If it doesn't integrate, then our industry is going to have a problem.
Do you see too, just like a lot of the day-to-day tasks becoming more automated within escrow?
It has to, just
Yeah.
because the amount of regulation and the amount of process to what we do has increased so dramatically. Because every year you learn something new, the industry learns something new. We have to put new things in place to protect consumers or to better guard them or to better inform them. So with each one of those things adds more work. So we have to be able to have it to where it's automated. Otherwise, we won't be able to do what we do currently.
Yeah, and I think it's scary when the technology first comes out because there's a lot of bugs and things. But then secondly, I mean, you still have human error to deal with too. So some of that automation could be really good. I mean, just for things that are easily measurable.
Oh,
That-
I'm
yeah.
welcoming every aspect of it. But change, that's the one thing that's inevitable in life, but nobody really loves it.
Yeah,
so.
because what I noticed too is like some of the best escrow officers, I mean, that are really busy, they either have to have a really big team to help out or they're just like nonstop, like it never sleeps. I mean, some of our escrow officers we're talking to on nights, weekends,
Oh, absolutely.
they're making things happen because, like you said,
Especially
that
the ones that are
volume,
good,
how do
they
you
need
get
it,
through
yeah.
it all?
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, they have to.
And there's so many kind of emergencies that happen, like these last minute closings and everybody's in a rush and it's a fire drill.
Yep.
Yeah, they kind of like have to deal with all that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a full-time job.
Yeah. On the entrepreneurial side, I guess Kenny and I were like, I've heard a little bit about how you built the business of escrow and how you kind of came to be. There's some cool things that you and I have even talked about, but like I kind of just want to talk about your strategy and your process for growing because you make it sound really easy when we were talking earlier about how you grew so fast, but there was a lot of strategy and planning that went behind that. How did you kind of like build your team and create the strategy that allowed you to kind of replicate Oakwood 4 other times for your 5 locations?
Step by step. Sometimes you walk those steps, but sometimes you have to run them. So once that momentum starts to pick up, that's when you're running. Even if you don't want to run, timing might predict or make it so that you have to run at that point. So really the culture was my biggest concern when we were growing, was making sure we held on to that culture. And that's been probably the hardest thing to do, is to make sure that as we grow from 4 people, 10 people,
Gary always
20
says.
people,
Yep.
40, 50, 60, 70. As you continue to grow that size, making sure that you still have that connection and you keep that culture, that's my biggest thing. And that's been my biggest struggle. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of work I still have to do on that front. And
Isn't it always?
always.
Yeah.
But again, that goes back to the team that we have and making sure we have the right team members and in the right position. So one of the biggest things that we do at Oakwood, and we all know this and we all say it, is we've got to identify and recognize strengths and weaknesses. Not as good or bad. The weakness isn't bad. It's just what is this team member's weakness and what is their strength? And don't have them doing a position that's their weakness when we
Right.
could have them doing a position that's their strength, and then we can start to benefit from it. So we really work on identifying each other's strengths and weaknesses and then making sure we're doing our strengths.
Is there a specific process that you go through to do that?
No, so I've been looking into different processes,
Yeah.
and
There's so many different people that do different things.
there's tests and there's
Yeah.
online things,
Yeah.
and I know there's a couple that I've heard of that are supposed to be really good, but I've not implemented like a test system. It's just more of like getting to know somebody and seeing what they're good
Yeah.
at. Okay, they're really good at meeting with people and talking with people, but they really lack on the detail. Well, detail is really important.
Yeah.
So let's put them in front of going out and talking to the clients and meeting with them and explaining the paperwork. And we'll have this person who hates that but is really good with detail doing
Yeah.
the detail work. And so just kind of identifying that and being honest with each other
Yeah.
and asking what's your strength and what's your weakness almost on a monthly basis, especially when you're first getting to know them, is very important.
One thing that you told me about one time, it's just stuck with me because it's something I want to do for my business, but it's a huge, it takes a lot of time, was the operations manual that you created.
Oh yeah.
Like,
because everybody talks about
how-
that now when they're starting business. It's
Yeah, I
crazy.
mean, what made you decide to do that? And how much time did you spend on it? And
Do you have a
how
mission
did it
statement?
how did it help your business?
I say that's when we became a real company,
Yeah.
in the sense
Interesting.
of being a corporation. So Oakwood Escrow is a C corp, but it's when we when I sat down and actually created that, and we did that because of CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They regulate the lenders that we work closely with, so the lenders have to make sure we comply with what they have to comply with. So it was very important to me that I showed our partners in the industry that we were going to do everything we could to match what they had to do. So we decided to do an SSA 16 audit, SOC 1, SOC 2, which was, looking back on it, I can't believe we did, but we did it. And it was at that point of realizing exactly the policies and procedures we needed. Now, our industry, and for me specifically, I didn't have something I could cut and paste that had already been created. So it was literally me sitting down and creating it from scratch and pulling from different people that I know in the industry that could offer guidance. And obviously a lot of our law connections, our attorneys that we work with, were able to suggest a lot of verbiage and things of that nature. But putting the entire policies and procedures packaged together created those systems, and it created the framework that supports the growth that we've had. Because with those, I've got something I can reference. And if it doesn't, and we can change it, and it's changed, we'll do updates to it, and it'll change throughout because it's a living organism. But it creates that framework that we build everything on. And that's very important, that foundation. And we had operated for 2-3 years without it, and we obviously were growing and doing well. But once we had all of those firmly in place, and I'm talking about down to minute details.
No,
of
you tell me, like how to change the paper and the copy
Everything.
machine.
Yeah.
You had to do that for them, right? They needed the audit.
We did yes. I might have gone a little overboard on some things, but we did. We went into that kind of
funny.
detail because I wanted there to be a reference point so that if somebody was wondering how they should, we kind of had a standard or a process to it.
I think that probably the majority of small to even medium-sized businesses probably don't have that, and they have
don't.
probably been in business for a really, really long time. How long did it take you to put that together?
It took me, I'd say 6 to 8 months to put it together.
And how many?
Wow.
Like you were working like crazy hours during that
It
time,
was,
right?
well, so I still had to run the company, obviously. But then at night, I would work on these. And we have a big dining room table, and I had that entire dining room table filled with different piles of different things I was working on.
That is a very large table.
It is a large table.
I know from personal
Trying
experience.
to keep it all together was the hardest part. And then I had to worry because we were being audited on it. So it wasn't just writing it for us and then like, oh, I like that. That's good. I then had to get it approved by an independent auditing firm who tore it apart, but in a good way. And ultimately we came to the final one, and that's the one we were graded on. And
How big is it?
It's
Just curious.
Well, it's multiple policies and
Okay,
multiple procedures.
okay.
So we have a policy
So like
for
hundreds and hundreds of pages.
hundreds and hundreds of
Yeah.
pages. Yeah. Hundreds and hundreds of pages.
No, it's crazy.
Like that is
Like he volunteered. You paid a company and volunteered to be audited and go
Yes.
through this
But
process.
that's a Goliath of a task to take on too, because it's not like so easy to just hire someone to do those things because nobody knows how you're going to run your company.
And we looked into hiring people, and,
Yeah.
and we went through probably 3 or 4 different people. And just in the process of trying to interview them and explain what I needed, I realized I can't teach
I
you
have to do
this.
this.
I'm going to have to do this.
Yeah.
Because it's like an email policy, cell phone policy, and email on your cell phone policy.
Yeah.
After work, using your cell phone for work, information about people on your cell phone outside of the office. All of these
My
things.
gosh.
Because we're dealing with people's personal information.
Yeah.
And it's very confidential.
problem.
We have
Yeah.
to make sure that we keep it confidential. So what kind of security does the phone have? Then writing the security requirements for phone, computer, laptop, home computer, if they access at all the network through home, all kinds of different policies.
Wow. And then, like you
procedures.
said, you put it through an audit, which nobody ever signs up to audit themselves.
Yeah, except
No.
for us.
Yeah.
We did, yeah.
That was smart.
And it's
That was-
also not cheap to audit yourself
It's
either
not.
on top
No.
of it. So
Time.
it's like a huge time investment, like a financial investment.
Right.
And then you had to
Stress.
create all this homework for yourself of these hundreds of pages of your
Yeah.
operations
Yeah,
manual.
A few times I thought I was crazy.
Wow. You're like, why did I do this?
But hindsight, it was everything.
Yeah, that's crazy. They usually some of the most challenging things are probably the best things to do. But it's like one of those things I've wanted to do too, but you're just like, if you're not forced really to do it, which I guess is the reason for the audit. I wanted to go back a little bit to your culture because we've been to not all of your locations, but a handful of them. And for us, like the minute I walk in, it's like, it does not feel like an escrow office at all.
No.
So
Thank you.
how did you come up with that idea? Because I know that I've been to a couple of your escrow offices, and for one, like there's like every like goodie or like snack or things.
Was
in,
that
like,
your idea too?
Yeah, I love chocolate.
Was that your idea to like? Was that your idea to like design it that way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
absolutely.
like in these cute little jars, and you have like these
No, it's,
living
you would love their
room
office,
areas and like phone boxes and bar, kind of like bar looking things, but you know, snacks and stuff. How did you come up with that idea? And like, how has it, like, how has it been like received by all of your clients?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
So, being in the title business before opening up Oakwood, I was in a lot of different escrow offices, and having bought and sold homes in the past, I personally have been in for signings, and the experience I used to remember was you go into a signing room and they'd literally have file boxes stacked with old
Yeah.
which looking back on it is amazing because your social security numbers are in there, your credit card numbers are in there, all your financial information are in those boxes, and I'm sitting next to it. And that was the way it used to be done. I'd be shocked if anybody's still doing it that way. Certainly we're not. But we'd go in and it was just this horrible feeling, and it was already a stressful process. So I'm going back to me as
It's like
personal.
an
buying and
interrogation
selling.
room, kind of. I feel like really
It's just
sterile.
boring,
and just-
stale offices. They're not. They haven't been upgraded in 20 years. It's like, yeah.
And after we bought our last home, our current home, I said, this just, it was a wonderful experience in the sense that we got the house we wanted, and it worked out. We were through it, but we were in there signing all of the paperwork, and it didn't feel joyous.
Celebratory.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, this can be done differently, and that was one of the reasons why I thought maybe we should I'm going to do this. I'm going to open up an escrow company, and we're going to make it different, and we're going to create an atmosphere with the consumer that when they come in, it feels like a home. Maybe not their home, but our home, and so that they feel that they're in somebody's home when they're signing their paperwork and doing that last stage. And hopefully, it'll bring a joy that when they leave, they're like, oh, it just adds to the experience instead of subtracting to it. From it.
I mean, I have people go there and sign. They're like, "Hey, have you been to that escrow office? That thing is ridiculous. It's the nicest thing." And they're like, "Usually they're dumps." It's like whatever, but yeah. I mean, that's a good that's what you wanted. That's the
That's what we
reaction you wanted. Yeah.
I think a lot of escrow offices don't see the value in that. And so they're thinking like, well, if they want to spend all that money to make those places nice, like how has it really helped you in building your business? And can you talk about that a little bit?
I don't know if I can tie a specific dollar
Yeah,
amount.
not a specific dollar amount,
Profit.
but yeah.
I'd say it's helped us in the sense that we do get a lot of that feedback from the
Maybe your brand.
from the brand.
Yeah.
For the
Brand,
brand,
yeah.
it definitely helps the
Yeah.
brand. From the consumer standpoint, we get so much positive feedback because they like the environment that it has paid dividends. And I know that filters back to the agents and the lenders and to the
Because they get a
community.
call. I get a call, and it's like, hey, it always feels good when you're using a company, you refer them, they go in there and sign like, that place is nice, they're very professional. That's what we
Yeah.
want. That's what you
Right.
want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that we're putting our best foot forward and reflecting those that have trusted us as best as we possibly can. And that's where I think we get our largest benefit from it.
Yeah, and I think it's such a smart idea because I think too, like in this day and age with social media and about how everybody wants something that looks pretty and that's like styled really well. Like everything's all about aesthetics right now and that kind of like feeling that you get. That I feel like Title and Escrow felt excluded from that. And I think we all have to step it up. It's funny because people walk into our office.
Your office is beautiful, by the way. I
Thank
love it.
you. And we had so much fun with it, but we've had other people go like, man, I really need to do should.
Also for us, for our team, we live there. I mean, we spend more time
That's the
sometimes
other
in the
thing I
office than
always
we do
said.
at home.
Sometimes, like always.
I know.
Yeah.
No,
So it has to be. It's our home.
it's an
Yeah.
environment.
It's our
Yeah.
environment. I mean, it's not just work. It's our home.
Yeah.
And that's important to
Yeah.
keep in mind for us and for our consumers and our clients that we work with. And so it matters. Environment matters.
Yeah, and that fits kind of into the culture that you were talking about too. You can't really create a great culture if you don't have a great space to
I think it's
have
tough.
that culture.
It's like if you live in a place you don't like or it's kind of dumpy, I feel like that's your mood. If you live in a place you love and you can make it your own, it changes your mindset.
Yep.
It really does. What do you think through the process, what's probably been like the biggest challenge or obstacle like growing this company?
Keeping the culture, making sure
That's
that
it.
I don't lose focus of why I started it and what the focus is, and that we keep that culture as we bring on more and more people that are coming from, because everybody's coming from a different
It's the
environment.
culture thing's big. That's what it is.
Different
yeah.
culture, and so getting them into Oakwood and then kind of staying that same family environment and respect level, that's my main focus.
What's been the biggest reward?
Seeing that it's working, Yeah, seeing that we are able to achieve that same culture, and bringing in people that might have been at a company where it was the exact opposite, and that's what they've always been involved in and have always lived with, and that's just been their norm, coming into our environment, and then slowly starting to see them change. And there's a physical change to it that occurs with some people, and that's a big reward for me.
What do you think the biggest, you personally, maybe you and Aaron both, but you personally going through and building this company from now to then, what do you think the biggest personal change has been for you through it all?
Time, just the amount of time that it takes. If you've never started a company and been the owner of a company, it's hard to fully explain. Just you never stop thinking about it. You never are off.
It's your baby.
It's your baby.
Yeah.
And every little thing you worry about just every little thing can affect it. And change is something that's always happening, and it can turn on a dime. And so you're just constantly thinking about ways of growth, changes that have occurred in law, employment law or HR, things that have to come up, you have to change, implement. Just you're always thinking about it. So you're always working, you're always trying to strive. And then our team members have lives that occur, and that affects, and then they'll be affected by something that's happened in their life, and that, they're close to me, and so that affects, emotionally as well. And so you just have a lot of turmoil going on, and it takes a lot of time. That's probably the number one thing, is if you can learn to manage that effectively, which I'm still trying to do, then you can have fun with it and really grow from it. But there's a lot of work that is taken, and long hours.
How do you, for somebody that might be listening that, wants to start a business or escrow on that point, Crystal and I, you can sit there until you've done a company, you've done through this whole thing. It's really, until you've done it, it's like you can't really describe it. But how do you, when you have one location, you have 5 locations, it just doesn't stop in your mind. It's always going. How do you deal with that just as being a CEO and leader in a company? Like, you got to deal with fires and personalities and everything. Like, how do you keep your calm and the smooth Jason that I know? Because obviously, like, some days I know there's days you deal with problems and you're like, holy smokes. And it hasn't been an easy road for you with a lot of stuff.
It's been a learning experience for sure. I think what I do is I treat each situation. I've kind of come to a realization of that no good and no bad philosophy of what I go back to, because you don't know what the end result's going to be yet. So I try not to put emotion into what seems like a negative situation. I put effort and time into resolving the issue, but without any emotional or putting a label on it, so to speak. So I don't label it as negative. It's my job. Okay, this is what I now have to focus on. And I try to treat it like that. Also, a little bit of time blocking, in the sense of your mind wants to solve problems. Mine does anyway. So it wants to work on different things. And so even in watching television, a problem will pop in and it'll start to try to solve the problem. It's consciously trying to keep things out at times when you should be present for other things is important. And so learning how to do that has been a big goal of mine, and something I work on constantly.
I love what you said about like not putting a label on things and like keeping the emotion out of it, because it's something
tough.
that everybody struggles with at times.
It is tough.
It's tough.
That is a good way to. That's a good
really
way to
cool.
think about it,
Yeah.
because. Yeah, that is something that it's like I even struggle with, but yeah, that's I think that's a battle for anybody that's like in a position where you have stress, and
Especially when you really care about something, though.
Yeah.
It's
because
really
when it's stressful,
hard.
everybody's looking at you like, okay, let's see how he does. Let's see how
but
he
that's
deals
really
with this.
cool.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a good nugget there.
What do you think if you had to go back to June 2012?
12.
I thought it was it. What are the 1 or 2 or 3 things you'd probably do differently now that you're here?
Hindsight's always that one. In law enforcement, we called it Monday night quarterback. It's very hard to look back, because now you have all the answers. So obviously starting something is difficult when you don't have that information of hindsight. But having it, I would say knowing who you're getting involved with is very important.
Okay.
Having the correct foundation is very important.
Okay.
And setting that foundation to support the growth that you have planned, and having a plan. Those 3 things are probably the main things that I, going back, would have told myself to do a little bit more, spend a little bit more time on.
Yeah. Do you feel like people think too small when they're building that foundation? That seems.
I think they do.
Yeah.
Or they don't think enough about it. And
Right.
a lot of that is you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so you don't even know what you don't. It's hard to put a lot of things into until you're in it.
Yeah.
It's the the quote I like, I forgot who it is where most people, I forgot who the leader guy is, John Maxwell.
Yeah.
It's the car lights. He said most people are scared to be an entrepreneur because the car lights only shine 300 feet ahead, but we got to go 3 miles.
Yeah.
So you're like, but I don't know what's in mile 2. But you're
Right.
like, you got to deal with it. And most people are like, that's too scary. I'll just take the 9-to-5 job and get my W-2. And I get it.
And to that point, I would probably not have started Oakwood if I had to start with the policies and procedures.
Yeah. You're like, I'd never get this
I'd have been
done.
like, that's it. I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What's the this will be interesting. What's the biggest piece of advice you're going to give to somebody that wants to start a business, escrow business, maybe just even get into the real estate space or start any business that's an entrepreneur, like you going through this, like where you're like, they sit down and go, hey, Jason, like I've got a couple minutes. What would you probably tell somebody, like, your big advice
Your
to them?
advice, yeah.
My advice to
Somebody who wants to start a business.
Maybe
wants
start a
to start a
business. It could be
business.
escrow. It could be anything. Just they're like, hey, I want to start a business. You've done this for 7 years.
You've got to first look at the numbers. You've got to make sure that it's doable with what you have and what your capabilities are. So numbers are key. I mean, because people are going to rely on you for their paycheck, for their salary, for making your kids' college payments, things of that nature. So knowing your numbers are very important. Also, understanding the industry is crucial. That's where I think I've also been able to excel in growing Oakwood is I know the San Diego real estate marketplace, and I had some experience in it already, and that's the key, is knowing your industry and knowing where it's going. You don't want to get into an industry that then, when Ford started making cars and you're in the horse industry, you're in the wrong
Right.
industry.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's very important to know what the industry is about. So those two things, and also to make sure you can have fun with it, because if you're not having fun with it, you won't get very
What's
far.
the point,
So if
Yeah.
you can go in a time machine and go back and you have a conversation with the 21-year-old Jason, what would you tell yourself?
Gosh, what was Jason
21-year-old?
doing at 21?
Well, you're here and you can go back. What would you tell yourself? Like, what would you tell yourself? What would that conversation look like now? All the stuff you know.
Well, that's an interesting, from purely a business standpoint.
Could be life, business,
Life.
whatever. Yeah, general.
I think going back to the no good, the no bad, just don't label things. Just and learn to be more mindful. At 21, I wasn't as mindful as I am now. So I think that's a process that is developed. Again, you've only got the headlights that reach so far, but mindfulness is probably one of the greatest. Yeah, I would have told myself to learn to be mindful.
Very cool.
That's good. What's your why? Why, when I say that, like, why do you work so hard? Why are you building this? You had a position before where, you're making good money probably, and, but you just said, I'm going to go over here and work 5 times as hard and build this thing. But when I know the why, I feel like it helps me understand, somebody better.
That goes back to the third reason of you make sure you have fun with it. I look at it as a journey, and it's part of the just part of the experience of getting there. I really enjoy. So I left the challenge of law enforcement and did a few different things in that, and which were challenging and fun, and each one different. And then when I moved over to this, completely different. And then same thing within this industry is doing the different things. So in law enforcement, it was crime scene investigation, short stint investigations, PERT team members. So all different types of things within that industry. And then in this industry, this was kind of that next journey, that next step I wanted to take, and growth strategy. And to be honest with you, it's one of the most challenging experiences I've ever had, but also one of the most fulfilling challenges I've ever had, which has been really nice.
That's awesome. So what's next? What's next for Jason and Oakwood, and what do you kind of see on the next, 12, 24 months?
Well, continuing with the culture, making sure that we're 18 or 19, I want to see what it's going to be like. I have to see what the marketplace is going to be like. So the jury's out exactly on what Oakwood will be doing. We'll still be around. We'll still be here. But I'm going to be very cautious because I have our entire team I want to think about.
Gotta be strategic.
Very strategic.
Yeah.
And now if the market goes like gangbusters and all of a sudden March and April and May, June, July
Then
just
you might have 10
explode,
locations.
we'll respond accordingly. But if it doesn't, then I need to make sure that we're okay, and which We will be, but I just have to make sure of that. So that I'm cautiously moving forward through 19.
Got to take care of your family.
You've got to take care of the family.
Yeah.
Don't you think a lot of people are with the real estate market and general economy? It's like people, the R word, the recession where it's coming, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be for real estate, because a lot of people could, when it goes down a little bit, there's so many millennials and people on the sidelines that get good rates, good prices. Let's go. So it could be good for us. Because I was reading an article from 2023. Somebody's saying after the recession, this economist, from 2023 to 2036, that will be the boom of the millennial buyer of cars and housing and merchandise. That's going to be when the millennial is going to be like fifth gear. I'm making money. I'm older. I have a
I've
family.
inherited money too.
This is when they're going to spend.
Yeah.
This is when that's going to be their big spending
What years
years.
were those?
2023.
Let me jot that down.
2023 to 2036. So even if we hit a blimp here, it's just interesting, because everybody asks, "Oh, what's the market?" I'm sure they asked you, and you're kind of like, I just go, fundamentally, there's not the loans, there's not this big old crisis before. I mean, I know there's student and the market and all this, but it's just, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But everybody has to deal with the market in our industry. Title, everybody has to make moves, and sure, you're just another company that has to deal with it and making moves.
Yeah, change is inevitable. There's going to be change, constant change. That's one thing we know is absolutely going to happen. But what's going to happen with the economy? There's so many different things going on right now, and it's a bit of a guessing game. I read so many articles, and there's so many different opinions that who's right? I don't know.
I think we all know that we're just kind of at that time, like we've had a really good run.
Yep, we
and
know
that
that.
Something's
Right.
coming.
That
It's
gut
not
feeling.
if, it's just when, really.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you know
also if you
how
look-
extreme and in what areas are going to suffer the most. And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's that gut feeling. And plus,
Yeah.
it's historical. You watch trends that happen every 7 or
Absolutely.
10 years, it looks like. And
Yep.
it doesn't mean they have to repeat, but
No.
it certainly means they could repeat.
historically, they've kind of repeated, though.
Yeah, they've been
so
pretty
it's
consistent.
been, I mean, like give or take a year or two here or there. And like, I think some industries are getting hit harder, like, maybe it was, the internet, the .com thing busted, a couple recessions ago, and then this last recession was really tough for real estate, and who knows if
But the recovery is really good.
if it's going to be a little softer for us this go round, or a little
Right.
So I think that's the big question for all of us. We're all speculating over here.
All
so,
speculating what's going to happen.
Yep.
Cool. Well, Jay, thanks for coming on, sharing
you
your
for
story,
having me.
learning a little bit more
Thank
about
you.
you.
Thank
Appreciate
you very
the
much.
time.
Man. It was fun. Thank
Cool.
you.